Hey there, dirt riders. Enduro Bandit here. I'm up on the mountain with my 2022 Kawasaki KLX300R. Today I'm going to be talking about what I love about this bike and what I really don't like about this bike from factory, and how to find solutions to the issues that you will be presented with. Every bike has its issues, and most of them you can work your way around. So I'm going to start with the shift lever, because that was something that I noticed like immediately. The shift levers that these things come with are almost guaranteed going to be too small for any adult male. Like if you've got, under size 10, maybe you can get away with it, but I've got size 11 and there was no way. I couldn't even wedge my foot in there, even with adjusting it up, moving it up a notch or two. It wasn't enough. It was like cramming your foot in a crack trying to shift the bike. And I put a Yamaha Banshee shifter on. That fixed the problem. You will have to bend it slightly to get it to fit nicely around the engine, which is easy to do if you have a vise to put it in. And also I noticed the foot pegs that come factory on this bike, you're going to want to change those out immediately, because they're really skinny, which makes you have a hard time riding with a good riding stance. Like, you want to have really good foot pegs. You don't want your feet sliding off the pegs. You don't want to have struggle to have a good riding stance because of your pegs. So I actually bought Amazon foot pegs, and I've been using them for 3 years. They've taken some brutal hits. People can say what they want, they can say they're crap, but they've proven that they're not crap. They're actually really good, and they sit just a tad pigeon-toed, which means the outside of them is pointed forward slightly than the inside, but that doesn't affect anything negatively. So they've been really good, and you might have to do a slight modification to get them to mount up. I had to reuse my original hardware to get them to mount on nicely so that they spring back and stuff, but I'm really happy with those now. Another issue about this thing is it will catch neutral often. Like, you have to do individual shifts to get it to move up, and even then sometimes it just keeps hitting neutral when trying to shift up from first. So I don't really even use first anymore, unless if I'm in a really slow speed, like really bumpy, rocky section that I know I'm gonna need to go up this like a tractor, basically, instead of like just bashing the bike through. Especially if I've got, my camping gear in a backpack or something, and I don't want to take a spill going a little faster. This bike allows you to really tractor along. That's another great thing about it. But we're talking about the negatives right now, so I'll stay on that. And how I found a solution to this is by basically adding power to the bike, and it can start from a dead stop in second, like with very little effort from the clutch. Like, the bike has lots of good low down power, so you don't really need first gear. So just basically you should be able to ride almost any trail without using first gear if you need to, and you can just work the clutch a little bit if it's struggling. If you're going through a tighter section, you just pull the clutch in a little bit or feather it, and it won't have a problem with that, especially if you do the upgrades that I've done to this bike, and I've got a video on some of those. So a few basic power mods will do the trick. And if you're on a really tight budget, you can just put a smaller front sprocket on, and that will allow the bike to have some more power. So it'll tighten up the gearing, and you're gonna lose a bit of top speed with that. So I never did that because I added power instead, and I love the gearing on this bike. But the bike does feel underpowered from factory. That's another gripe. It's not a big one, but like, if you're just getting into riding, it's tons of power, but it is like a little bit sluggish. Like, it'll do anything you need it to do, but it is a little bit sluggish. And once you do a few basic power mods like the KDX snorkel, the EJK tuner, and the pair valve delete, those are not that expensive, and they make actually a huge difference. I also added a Pro Circuit T6 muffler later, and I love that upgrade. Makes the bike sound better. Added more power on top of that even. So I'm really happy with the bike's power now. It'll easily hang with a, you know, KX250F, or it'll smoke those Honda CRF300s for sure. Like every bike that's in its class, you know, like dedicated trail bikes, it's the best in its class for those. It's cheaper. It's got better suspension than the TTRs and the Hondas. Way more adjustments you can do on the suspension too, like more adjustable. You know, it's got a water-cooled engine, with which those bikes, the Hondas don't have. I'm not sure about the TTRs. I think they're air-cooled, but I haven't checked up lately. But anyway, but this bike is quite a heavy bike, so that's another thing to keep in mind. And so if you're a really light person, it's probably not the bike for you, honestly. Like, unless if you're willing to really ride this thing like a Bronco, basically. You gotta have a bit of muscle to muscle it around sometimes on the hill climbs. Other than that, like, it's not bad really, because it has a short wheelbase, so that really helps make it feel a lot lighter than it is. Like when you're on the flowy single track and stuff, you really don't actually notice the weight. You only really notice the weight when you take a spill on a hill climb. Trying to lift the bike is quite strenuous, so you might want to think twice before you do those really gnarly climbs with this bike, because it will put extra strain on you trying to hold the bike up or trying to lift it up. And you gotta have your, you know, you gotta be standing basically right on the tank. You gotta be right on the tank to get up a lot of climbs, because the front wheel wants to lift, and so you're gonna need a bit of upper body strength for that. Not that you don't need upper body strength for a lot of bikes, but it seems like with this bike, you really gotta position your weight further at the front. Maybe it's because of the shorter wheelbase. It could just be that it's got more torque and traction than my YZ on the hill climbs, but yeah, it seems to be able to do any climb my YZ can do. So after the power upgrades, when it was stock, it struggled holding second gear on a lot of the harder climbs. It barely had the power to hold second. Some of them it didn't have power to even hold second all the way. So, but that's not a problem anymore at all. One thing that kind of bugged me a bit when I bought this bike is that it doesn't have a kickstart. You've just got an electric start. So, you know, if something goes wrong with your wiring, or if you have a weak battery, you know, you haven't tended to it in 2 years, you might end up stranded on the other side of a mountain or something in a valley. What are you going to do? You're going to have to trek out, bring a new battery back. Because it will start in the garage if it's warm, probably, but then you get outside and let's say the temperatures are 10 degrees lower, that battery might not be working for you now. So, like, it won't fire, but it will turn over fine if the battery's weak, which is a really weird thing that I'm not used to, because it's picky about having a mint battery, you know. But 3 years, that's not terrible. It's been really reliable otherwise, the electric start. The stock tires, MX52 Dunlops, they are mediocre for sure. They're really good on the rocks and the harder terrain, the roots and stuff. They're really not good in the mud or in the sand. And the front wheel, with those stock tires, kind of wants to wash out a little sometimes, so you got to be careful, because I mean, if you're running standard pressure like me, like 10, 11 psi usually, that front wheel, it might want to wash out on you. It also deflects off rocks easier than my YZ250X or most other bikes I've owned. It wants to deflect off, and I've had some accidents because of that going downhill. But that may be because of the tire, I think, because the bike feels really well balanced. Actually, I swapped out the rear tire, and definitely seeing the difference on it. I've got a Dunlop Geomax AT82 on there now. Really good tire that I recommend. A lot of people go with the Shinko Cheater. That one's really good too. I think it wears down a little faster. So I'm kind of going for a balance of like better traction but also durability. But the Shinko, I think, has even better traction but not quite as long durability. So another minor thing that I don't like is the kickstand is kind of too short. It depends, you know, what you have to have your sag adjusted to, I think, because some people complain of it being too long. Maybe there are people that have like the suspension modified because they're shorter or something, but for me, the kickstand is definitely a couple inches too short, I think. So you want to just use it basically on the upper side of the hill of the bike. Now let's talk about the positive things about this bike, the things that I love about this bike. Top of the list, it's very low maintenance, guys. Like the manual, I wouldn't recommend going 60 hours between oil changes and oil filter changes, but that's what it says, that you can go 60 hours. I only go about 10 hours, and I go 20 for the oil filter, and the valves only need to be checked and potentially adjusted every 60 hours according to the manual. Although I've seen most guys are going 80. They're checking them and they're fine at 80, and a lot of guys are going 100 and they're even fine at 100. But you know, some of them are they need to be adjusted at 100. So this isn't like a motocross bike where it needs to be checked every 20 hours, which that's such a pain. Like, you want to be riding, you don't want to be just tinkering constantly, unless if you're one of those guys who just loves to tinker on his bike more than ride it. So that's another great thing about this bike, is that you're gonna have more seat time instead of making adjustments and stuff constantly, and cleaning and changing things. The air filter stays clean like 2 to 3 times as long. Oh, I'd say 3 to 4 times as long actually as most motocross bikes, because those things, you know, they're made for peak power. Like, they want as much air coming in as possible, so there's lots of holes and stuff in the plastics for air to come in, but then dust is coming in. And this thing's got a snorkel, but which you want to upgrade to the KDX snorkel, but that won't make you have to change the air filter to clean the air filter more often, because it still is you know, very little dust getting in there. So I love that about the bike. You know, this bike, Kawasaki, made an amazing trail bike here that you can just ride, and you can just keep riding it. I wouldn't recommend checking the bolts after every ride though, because you don't want to have a major accident because something falls apart while you're clipping along, which that's pretty much what happened to me a long time ago, and ever since then I've been checking bolts. My rear tire the axle fell out at 80k. I almost had a serious accident. So yeah, this bike is really affordable. You know, from the dealership, you can get one of these for half the price of a new KTM, and that's just awesome that you can get into dirt biking for a lot less, and you can pretty much do anything those KTMs can do. Maybe not as easily, but after a few upgrades, you know, you can easily hang with the pack with those KTM guys. It's got excellent gearing. It's one of my favorite things about this bike, is that the gearing that they have on this bike is amazing. Like, nice low first gear for tractoring along. Like, it's so hard to stall the bike in first gear. Second gear, you can start from a dead stop. Like, barely have to work the clutch at all. Like, just you let it out a little slower, get a little more gas, and it's fine. Yeah, the rest of the gears are spaced nicely. Top speed is still pretty decent at about 120 kilometers an hour on this bike, and you don't really need to go any faster than that on an FSR. Though it's always fun, but if we're picking and choosing here, then I choose this gear ratio for, you know, single track and general trail riding. It's got amazing low end torque, as I've mentioned. The electric start is actually something that you totally need on this bike because of how heavy it is. You don't want to be trying to hold up the bike while kicking it on the side of a steep hill, stuff like that. Short wheelbase, I mentioned earlier, really helps the bike feel agile even though it is pretty heavy. So yeah, as long as you keep this thing moving, it feels light for sure. And yeah, just overall excellent trail bike, and I totally would recommend it, guys. Like, I wouldn't recommend it for expert level riders, but for, you know, amateurs and intermediate riders who are looking at they're looking for a pretty budget friendly bike that's reliable and, you you know, fun. They're not looking for, you know, over 50 horsepower or anything crazy, but it'll easily hang with those 50 horsepower bikes. It just won't beat them in a head-to-head race. You know, like my YZ250X is about 52 horsepower, somewhere around there, and that thing really hauls. This thing wouldn't be able to beat it in a race, but it's got it where it counts. In fact, some of the hill climbs with this bike, it does with ease compared to the YZ250X, and the gearing on the YZ isn't as good. So, I mean, each bike has its strengths and weaknesses. This one, the weight works against it in the sand, it works against it in the mud, but upgrading the tires will really help with that. Adding a headlight is a nice upgrade that you can do. So yeah, there's a few mods that I've done to mine that you can check out on my channel. And thanks for watching, guys. I hope you have a great weekend riding, and stay tuned for more.